What's up, guys? Martinique here from the Exclude team. Today I have something really exciting to share with you guys. This is the template, the checklist we use to get server-side Google Tag Manager tracking all set up, all the way from the beginning to the end. And we'll cover everything. So we'll cover how to set it up, how to make sure it works, which platforms to use, and all sorts of other things, guys. You really want to use server-side tracking in the future because it allows you to measure more data than the standard setup. We've seen examples with an uplift of, let's say, 20 to 30%, which is crazy high, of course. More conversions in your campaigns is more data for the algorithm to work with and for you to optimize on, of course. In average, we see at least a 10% uplift. Oh, sorry, I think in most cases it's about 5 to 15%, but we've seen some outliers with, let's say, 20% plus. It all depends on your website and the traffic that you're capturing. So as you can see, I split this up in where action should be taken. That can either be your server-side tool. We'll be using taggers in this, but you can also use tape or maybe even profit metrics when just taking on the Google Ads part. There's also something to do on the website for you guys and in the server-side container and the client-side container as well. I'm just gonna move myself here so I won't be in my own way here. And this is just quick heads up for you guys how to get started with server-side tracking. You really want to capture more data here. I'm not gonna go all the way on the ins and outs of server-side tracking. I'm just gonna run you through the setup of our own website, just to make sure you know which actions you should take and you're not overwhelmed by all the different options and all the different methods there are in your container, guys. So we're gonna start at the top and then we're gonna move all the way down through the bottom. And I have my Google Tag Manager open. I have taggers open, just to show you guys what you need to do in order to get this to run, guys. So I'm gonna start here in the server-side tool. I kind of have this on an, it could mean like anything because there are different tools you can use and they all have their own downsides, their own upsides, and also their own actions you should take. So obviously, guys, you should create your account and your necessities. You can just move on to taggers to see which pricing you should have and get your account started. Not gonna go how your account works, but I am gonna go deep on the Google Tag Manager part. So I'm gonna start here with what you should do on your website. So you need a subdomain, and a subdomain can either be like a test or a data collection .yourdomain.com. I decided to go with service.adcrease.nl, and you write it like this. So service.adcrease.nl, and I chose to do it with service because if you and because if you use words like tracking or something like that, it could mean that in the future ad blockers can still capture that name, and your script might not work as you would like. So I like to keep it like a general name, like service, because it could literally mean anything. So what you need to do, if you need to have your subdomain and your DNS validated, I'll supply like a link here from the tagger support showing you exactly how to do this. Not gonna go all in on this. So what you need to do is you need to have your server-side GTM container here. I have my server-side container here. Let me just move it down a bit. And you can like easily create a new container within Google Tag Manager. So you can just do container plus, and then you should choose server. I already did so I'm not gonna do it in this example. But when doing this, you need to complete like a few options here. So you need to have your URL in your container settings in the admin for GTM. I'm gonna show you exactly what that looks like. So if you have your admin here and you have your container settings here, oh, sorry, this is my web container, guys. Now I'm in the server container. You can have your container settings here. As you can see, I named it server side. Feel free to name it whatever you would like. And I have my subdomain here, service.atcrease.nl. Make sure to not include the www dot, because that's not necessary. After you've done so, you also need to set up your container configuration. This code will pop up in Taggers or Stape or whatever tool when you create your account, and when you add your own client account in here. Like this configuration just pops up, and it's like a unique string that you can use to link the server-side tool to your Tag Manager container. When opening this up, as you can see, I have my container configuration code here, which you can obviously then just copy. So when you did that, you have like your basics set up. So you have your container. This should all be okay now, but then you will obviously have like an empty container. So what you need to start with is create a client, and a client is something that you can send the data to. So every server-side container needs a GA4 client, because obviously you will be sending data to GA4. So I just created my client, and I'm going to show you what it looks like. So you create your client. It's called GA4. It's like the default. And there are a few things you need to enable here, which I'll guide you through in a bit. So when you created your client, there are two things you should do, guys. You should check like a few boxes here. So check your default.js JS path, which you can see here. And you can also enable this one and add your GA4 measurement ID, so it knows which which GA4 account it needs to send data to. And then I also enable these two. And I should have enabled my region specific settings here. I'll do that later. So I added my measurement ID, and I also like to use a constant variable here. Why? Because you really don't want any typos to occur. So what I did, I created a variable here, and that's called my measurement ID. And that's like obviously had the string of my measurement ID here. I also did that for my conversion ID in Google Ads. So I can easily just select this variable instead of manually typing the measurement ID, because if there are any typos, it will obviously not work. And it's like a really specific thing you should do. Then I also added a client for the web container, because if there are any things outside of the GA4 client you want to do, you want your web container to capture that data as well. So what I did, I added my container ID as a constant variable, and I enabled my region specific settings. So those are some of the first things, guys, you need to do in your server-side container. Then we're going to move back to the client container, because there are a few things you need to do there, because the data will be sent from your browser to the client container to the server container. So what you want to do here is you want to add a parameter to your GA4 tag, and that parameter is called server container URL. And that should contain the URL of your subdomain, which you will be using for server-side tracking, of course, guys. So if I would show you what that would look like, I would have my tag here. Let's say I would have my GA4. I still have my universal analytics tags. Obviously, they're passed. So looking at this, I would have my Google tag, my GA4 tag, and I have like server container URL here, which then contains my service.atcrease.nl. And I'm going to show you guys in a bit why you need this and how it works exactly. you need to do this as well for all your GA4 event tags. So you did it for the GA4 config tag, and you also need to do this for your event tags. So let's say I would have like a random example here of my GA4 event tag. And then I'm gonna like add this parameter, and that will then be called any inherited. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I have any inherited ones. So the server container URL is then service.atcrease.nl, which then allows all the events to be shared with that container URL, obviously, so that then the data can be sent to the server. So make sure to do that for all the events. I have this thing called preview in here because now I'll be using the preview mode, and then I can see if it does what it's supposed to do. So you can preview your client side and your server side container at the same time. And you should check if your page view or whatever event is sent to the server URL and if any requests are incoming here. So if I would just pull up my first page view event here, which I just triggered, I would have my GA4 configuration here. I would see there are some HTTP requests, which is obviously what it's supposed to do. And then I have this here. So I have my client, then of course triggered. I have some event data here, which for now isn't really important. So let me just trigger another page view here. So new page view. So we already know that it works because my data is coming in, obviously. So let's just take this GA4 configuration here. There is an outgoing request, so that's nice. So that means there's like a request coming in. Right, guys. So I have all my parameters to include set to all, which means my parameters will be passed on. Can't see them now, but we know that it works because we have the page views coming in the server-side container. And if we check the configuration, we see that it works. We have outgoing requests as well, so that all works just perfectly fine. So knowing this, we know that the requests are sent here. You do see an error here in the console part, and that's because I haven't configured my region-specific settings here. You really need to do this, otherwise your Google signals won't work and your audiences won't be shared with Google Ads coming from GA4. That's something for me to still include here. So knowing that, so we've seen that it works and we know that our events are working and that we connected the GA4 client in the correct way. So now we'll be creating a trigger to fire everything and to fire the correct tags and all that. So doing so, I already did it here to save you guys some time, of course. So I created a trigger. Client name is GA4, and it's a custom trigger, and you can trigger your, you can set up this trigger with the client name equals GA4. Because the client will fire every time, this will just fire with every event. You do need that client in order to capture data. So doing this allows you to be able to target, to capture that data. Now we're going to set up our GA4 configuration, which will then fire on that specific trigger we just created. So heading back over, I of course have my GA4 configuration here, and which fires on the client name is GA4. And we have our measurement ID here. I set the redact visitor IP address to true in order to make sure that our privacy standards are maintained here. I haven't used any of the other settings as it's just not necessary in my case here. But there are some parameters you can include and there are some parameters you can exclude if there is data that you don't want passed on to GA4. For example, like privacy sensitive data. If you're in the European Union, of course, there are some things that you need to keep in mind here. You can just send all data. That's why I redacted the IP, just to make sure we're safe here. Your event name doesn't need to be changed, as it will take the event name from the client container. So there's like a connection there. So no need to fill this in here, as it will default to the standard name you set in your client container. Just providing some examples here. So we have the measurement ID as well. We have the redact visitor IP address, which is true. You can, of course, decide whether or not this fits your company's needs. There is some specific data that you can exclude from GA4, like the user-specific data. I don't collect that in this case, so for me, it's really not necessary here. Now we're going back to the debug mode, and I'm going to show you what the data is that comes in. So looking at this, I just clicked on the email address. That's an event I have. It's called click mail. So knowing that that was fired, I'm just going to take this here and my GA4 event click mail, it fired. So that is obviously also passed on to the server container, which is here, event is click mail. Knowing this or seeing this, I know that my link is now correct because the event is picked up in the client container and it's picked up in the server container as well. So I have that here, and this is my, I have it for Google Ads as well. And there is no need to create all your events in your server container as well as we're used to with the client container, where we need a tag for every event. For now, that's not true. So that's not necessary. So for now, if you have a GA4 tag, it will capture all the events that you set up in your client-side container. Your client-side container is important in this, as it should be implemented in the right way. More on that in other videos, guys. So I have all my parameters here. I haven't excluded anything. It captures my measurement ID, and there are some outgoing requests here. For now, I'm not going to go too deep on this because it's just not necessary, and I just want to keep this like a bit short and easy to understand for you guys. So my event just came in the server-side container, so I know that it's set up correctly. I can also like try another one. So I can also click my own phone number, for example. And then I will also see this in the client-side container. I have my GA4 event click tel, which is short for telephone, of course. And I also see that same event in my server-side container. That's cool because I then know it works. So we also need other tags. So we also need the conversion linker tag, which is first-party cookie that collects the click ID, for example, when you use Google Ads. So I have it set up here. I'm just going to discard this because I know that this GA4 configuration is set up the way it should be. So I named all my tags SST for server-side tracking, of course. And then I have the conversion linker here. You can just add it here. Then you can click tag, and then you can click conversion linker. You don't have the options you have in your client-side container, but that's obviously not necessary here. So I have my conversion linker. I'm just going to show you the way I configured my conversion linker here. So I set it to fire on all pages. It's kind of like a very basic setting, the way it is as it's in the client container as well. I haven't used all these because it's not necessary, and I'm not working with any other subdomains, and I don't need to override my cookie settings here, just because we don't use all these features on our website. So now I have my conversion linker tag and it's triggered on all pages. You can also trigger this on your GA4 client, as it will practically do the same, because your GA4 client will also fire on all pages. Now for the Google Ads part, you also need triggers for all your events, obviously, and then you also need your tags, just as you set it up in your client-side container. So as I have it here, I created triggers and tags for our most important events here. So click on my LinkedIn, click on my mail, click on my phone, whatever, and a few form submissions here. And then I also created Google Ads tags for those separately. So let's just pick one. So I'll use my mail click here. I have a conversion ID, I have a conversion label. It's kind of the same thing as it is in your client-side container. So my client-side container will look like this. So it has the email click here, it has the conversion ID, it has a conversion label. All the other stuff I don't need, because we're not an e-commerce website, of course. So this is basically the same. And as you already noticed in my preview mode, and when I click mail or click telephone number or whatever, we also have like a phone click tag firing here. And it has the conversion ID and it has a label. And we also see that there's an outgoing request. So we know that this functions the way it should be. So having said that, we have just also set up our Google Ads tags. So you can just take your client-side tracking and kind of duplicate it into your server-side container. So you just like also create the tags, make sure they're populated, of course, with the right values, your conversion ID and your conversion label, and then just test it. As we just did in the preview mode, guys. If you see that your events are being passed on, perfect. You're ready to move on to the next step. So to summarize here, we have the tags here. So we have our Google Ads tags here. I just took the mail click as an example. It has an ID, it has a label. And we also have the same ones, obviously, in our client-side container. So we have the email click, which then fires and is then picked up by the server side. Perfect. What you also want to do is, if you use your remarketing tags, I say you should, let's just create like a remarketing tag as well here. So we have our remarketing tag in the client side container as well. Here we have it, Google as remarketing tag with conversion ID, no custom parameters. And we also have our remarketing tag. On the client name is GA4, could also be all pages, doesn't really matter. Which just looks the same. It has like a conversion ID in here, no other stuff, no dynamic remarketing, because we just don't need that. Yeah, so then again, debug all your events in your server side and your client side. We know that the tags are firing because we just checked so. So I'm not gonna check it again because we just saw that it worked. Now, there are a few things to double check here. If you're using enhanced conversions, which you obviously should, let's just see if that works. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna add an event parameter to the GA4 tag. And we're gonna call that user data, and it's gonna have the user provided data. So we're gonna check this in the client container now. So let me just pick one here. Let's just say contact form. So I don't have this set up for our website for now. So I'm going to skip the enhanced conversions visual part, but I'm going to explain it to you guys and create like a separate video on it later. So what you need to do is you have an event parameter called user data that contains your user provided data. And that should look like this. So if you would have your, let me just try again here. So if you would have your Google Ads tag here in the client container, You can just include your user provided data from your website. I haven't created one because we haven't really set this up for this demo. And then you can create like a new variable, and here you have like something that you can set to capture the email address from the person that submitted the request. So you can capture this from a data layer. You can also set it to automatic collection if you prefer. There are like a few different options here. I would personally work with a manual configuration and then creating like a variable here that captures that email address. And then you can set it in your user provided data here. For your server-side container, it works a bit different. So you can open up your server-side tag here, and then you have like the conversion linker here, and you have the advanced settings, of course. And what you need to do is you need to enable user provided data in your Google Ads tags. I just removed that option because it seems deprecated. So I'm going to continue with the decide if you want to exclude user data from the GA4 tag because of compliancy. So what you should do here is if you have your GA4 configuration and you have your user data set up, then you can also exclude that, of course. So here you have some parameters to include, and there are some you can exclude as well. And then you can just choose from all different variables that you have here. So if you created your user provided variable, you can just exclude it here and it won't send that email address to GA4. And that's obviously nice because then you know that there is no sensitive personal information shared with Google Ads on that part. Check the website console, guys, so you know that there are no error messages. I know that there are none, so I'm just gonna check this here. I haven't seen any error messages here, but you should check it because it can happen that sometimes there are some errors that need some debugging, and you can maybe consult with your developer. So knowing this, we set up our GA4 tag, we set up our basic Google Ads tags. Furthermore, we also can set up our enhanced GTM script, which replaces your current GTM script. The benefit here is that ad blockers and such, they will read the script on your website. Let me just pull this up here. So I have my GTM script here somewhere. Let me just look it up here real quick for you guys. Yeah, so this is it. And normally on other websites, you would have, this would contain http @crease.nl, for example. In our script, it contains service.@crease.nl. And the benefit here is that ad blockers might not be able to read that because ad blockers can make sure that your script isn't firing because it disallows tracking. You obviously want to allow tracking, so that's why it's kind of a workaround here. What you can do, at least the way it works within taggers, is that you can enrich here, you can optimize here, and the optimize allows for an enhanced tracking script. Your enhanced tracking script means that your domain will look different. So you just set up your GTM ID here, which I'm not going to do for the example. But if you would set that up here and you would see your new code, that would exactly look like this. And it would contain another domain, which then allows you to gather 1 or 2% of extra data, which is of course super valuable because all data is valuable. And if this is like the easiest method you can do to have like 1 or 2% extra data. There are different methods to measure your uplift. I like to use the default from taggers, which just shows we have like a 7% uplift here in the page view event, which is really nice because it allows us to capture more data. Also for consent mode, there are a few things you can do. I think for our example here, Google will just make sure that it works if you use CMP. So we use Cookiebot. So for us, it's already taken care of. And what you can do for other tags, like for example, a Facebook tag, is that you can use this parameter from the server container, and it shows whether or not consent was given in the event data. So if we would see how that would work. Let me just move this thing around here. Let me just refresh this part, guys. So for the example, I have it here, and then we have, like, let's say we take the last page view event, and then we would have some event data. And here we have this GCS, and that contains G111. That means consent was given. I have like an example here. So let's say we would just type this into Google and see what pops up. Simo Ahava, he has like super awesome content. And what we can do here is just not find this. So you can just experiment with this, because if you would see that you're not getting any consent, then this would be another number. So then that means you can also fire your tags based on whether or not any consent was given. Then I just always make sure to have like a test in place. So just perform a test order, knowing that it works. This is just something you should always do when working with tracking. And a few days after the implementation, you would have like, you would check the diagnostics in your Google Ads conversion tag, knowing that it works, knowing that conversions are still passed on, and enhanced conversions in consent mode are still fully functional. If you set up your dynamic remarketing for e-commerce, just check out your match rates in Google Ads to see if that works. Check your uplift. Just know that works. Is your data still coming in Google Analytics? Make sure to check all your platforms, guys. It's really important. Then lastly, if you set up your remarketing tag, you can always pause your client-side remarketing tag because it's now picked up from the server-side container. So your client-side containers shouldn't really need a remarketing tag anymore. It's a minor thing, but hey, the less tags we fire, the less loading time we need. So I hope this really gave you like an idea of what you should do with your GA4 tracking and your Google Ads tracking. I'll make sure to provide an example on the enhanced conversions part later, just so you guys also exactly know the way that works. All right, guys, I just have like a small addition here. I just tested the enhanced conversions on another website where I did set this up, and we see here that it's captured on the client side. It's just not visible in the server side container. This was just something minor I just forgot to mention. So if you see it working in your client side container, it also works in your server side container. And I just added this as like a check here to make sure your diagnostics in Google Ads are working. It should work, but there can always be some minor thing gone wrong somewhere. Just make sure to check it, and it should work if you set this up in your client-side container as well. Thanks, guys. I really hope you found this valuable. Just know that we at AdCrease work with senior specialists only. We have a few tracking specialists. We have Google Ads specialists. I'm one myself, of course, obviously. Love working with brands to help them with their Google Ads. Tracking is, of course, a major part here. So I'll be creating much more content like this, just to make sure that the entire world can benefit from good tracking. We also do free audits, guys. So if you feel like you're stuck in Google Ads, let's say you're a brand owner and you're running your Google Ads yourself and you think you're kind of hitting a ceiling somewhere, just connect me, guys. Send me a message on LinkedIn, on the website, or whatever. I'll be happy to help. Thanks, Ed.